Troy LaRaviere is joining us. I'll conclude my remarks and then bring Troy on. I know the Sun-Times is really bending over backwards to try their hardest to make it clear that the police officer had a reason to fear for his life because it's likely that Adam Toledo had a gun in his hand, but I'm looking at this picture right now, the final instant of Adam's life. There's no gun in his hand. And I'll hold back on what my thoughts are on Lori Lightfoot's comment because we got Troy LaRaviere here, D. Don't you think it's a good idea to bring him on?
Let's do it.
Troy LaRaviere, a good friend of the show, good friend of mine, the head of the Chicago Principals Association. I've known him for about 5 years now. He speaks his mind. He's thoughtful. But Troy, let's just start with the basics. Your just general thoughts. When you saw, I presume you've seen the video. Am I correct?
Yes, I've seen the video. So the idea that he had a gun being a justifiable reason to shoot someone, especially when it's a person of color, because when white people have guns, they don't get shot, right? You don't get shot for having a gun. You don't get shot for having a gun and running, right? That's why there's this whole Second Amendment thing. Like you can have one. You should not get shot for having a gun, period. And then there's this idea about fearing for a cop fearing for his or her life. Now, we have to make up our minds with our narrative of cops because you can't have it both ways. You can't say we put our lives on the line. In one sense, we have to uphold these folks because they put their lives on the line for us. And then when you look at something like what just happened with Adam, and we see that they say, well, he had a gun, so the officer was justified in fearing, and then therefore justified in shooting Adam. When you look at that, it runs counter to the narrative that officers put their lives on the line, right? Putting your life on the line would have been waiting another moment until you were sure. That's putting your life on the line. When you shoot because you think you saw a gun, you think he might shoot you with the gun, before you are certain that a gun is being aimed at you, you are not putting your life on the line. You are acting out of fear for your life. You're not putting it on the line would be waiting that extra second, half a second, extra moment until you're certain. That's putting your life on the line. And if you're not willing to do that, then stop saying that you're putting your life on the line because that's not what you're doing. You know, as a cop, your job is to protect Adam's life. Like, it needs to be a whole different way or mindset. So from saying that this narrative that he had a gun and she was just for justified, one is bullshit, and two, it runs counter to the whole narrative that cops put their lives on the line. Make up your mind. You either put your life on the line and wait that extra half a second, or you go ahead and admit it's all about your life. You're not here to serve and protect. You're not going to put your life on the line. You're going to shoot first because what you think you see. And then we're going to end this public narrative about cops putting their lives on the line. Now, in fairness to police officers in general, I'm fairly certain there's been hundreds of thousands of incidents where the cop waited, right? And we never hear about them because the person lives. And those cops are putting their lives on the line. They are doing the right thing. They wait to the certain. And in that split second where they wait, they are putting their lives on the line and they need to be praised for it. But in cases like this, where you didn't put your life on the line, the possibility of maybe losing your life took precedent over maybe saving this boy's life by waiting that extra half a second, right? Like, that's the kind of policing that needs to end. That's the kind of incident that needs to be highlighted to rethink what the entire nature of policing has to be in terms of you being there to protect him and what you have to do in that moment to save his life. That's what you're there for. That's my comment.
How realistic Is it to change the mindset of police officers, to get them to stop thinking about their lives at a moment like that and start thinking about the person they're chasing through an alley in his life?
It has to be part of the culture. It has to, the hypocrisy of saying you're putting your life on the line while at the same time actually not putting your life on the line by not pausing. Like, the hypocrisy has to be part of the training. It has to be part of how we talk about policing. I think it's realistic. You get a critical mass. It's real. I know it's possible. Is it possible in this political environment? Is it possible with this leadership? Is it possible with this union? Is it possible with the level of public consciousness about that hypocrisy that we have right now? No. But it has to be built. And I don't know if I'm the first one to say it. I've never heard it anywhere. But it has to get repeated. It has to be part of what people come together and organize to make happen. It wasn't possible. Hell, it wasn't possible for police to be wearing body cams 15 years ago, and now they're all over the place. Someone got the idea. It spread movements. And many of these police accountability laws that are in existence, they weren't possible before, but someone got the ideas. They built movements around them. They pressured their politicians. And now we see police accountability laws being passed in state legislatures and city councils across the nation. But right now it's just an idea. It has to spread. Movements have to be built around making them happen, making our politicians, our elected officials, institute, make that a part of the culture of how they talk about policing, first of all, and making it a part of how police get trained, and how policing culture is built. You know what I mean? So it also means getting rid of a lot of folk who are in policing right now, who don't agree with that fundamental principle. That fundamental principle, you got to go.
That riff you went on about don't say you're putting your life on your line if you've not putting your life on your line, which is, I hadn't thought of that before. Have you ever said that to a police officer?
I've never said it to anyone. I just said it in response to your question. First time it's left my mouth. Maybe I need to say it more often.
Yeah, it's powerful. I hadn't thought of it. I had not thought of that.
Yeah, if you go,
and that. I mean, you're right. That to have the wherewithal to just hold your fire for another second, just to absolutely make certain that the person you're pointing a gun at does not have a gun in his hand. That is putting your life on the line. That is
exactly
putting your life on the line. And I'll say it again. I'm looking at the picture right now. He did not have a gun in his hand.
Yeah, so very clear.
Yeah, he did not have a gun in his hand. And if that police officer had not pulled that, he'd be a hero, because he would have put his life on the line. And by doing so, he would have spared another life.
That's
and
right.
Maybe that would have been enough to turn Adam Toledo's life around. Who knows?
That's right. It's your job to put your life on the line. You say you do it, then damn it, do it. That has to be the culture of policing. You put your life on the line. But that's not what's happening. It didn't happen last night. I don't want to say it's not what's happening, because like I said earlier, I'm sure it's happening, and we never know, because that person lives. That person just gets arrested. That person gets a misdemeanor. And I'm sure it's happened quite a bit. And the people who held for that extra second and risked their lives in that moment, deserve praise. But that cop who shot at him deserves something else.
And Troy, I have to say, when I was listening to you, it brought back, we had a conversation yesterday in a show with a different guest, Vincent Normand, and who's a frequent guest in the show. And he had sent me a clip, which you probably saw. I don't know if you saw or not, but it's a clip of white police officers pulling over a white man in a car, and the man has a gun. And this is to your point. And the motorist with the gun is just totally verbally abusing the cop. And the cops end up letting him, they're like, sir, please, sir, not, and then they end up letting him drive away. And this is to the point you were making, that there's something going on in the mind of a police officer in a moment like that, where even though when they see a white person with a gun, they don't view it as a threat. Now, I don't even know if that police officer knew the race or ethnicity of Adam Toledo. He's chasing someone in an alley. It's dark. So I have no idea.
He knew what neighborhood he was in.
He read my mind. So when do we start dealing with that? The reality that in someone's head, there are conscious differences between what they like, the race of the person holding the gun.
Well, they're already, in theory, dealing with it. That's what this implicit bias training is supposed to be all about. I don't know how effective it is. I've never gone through implicit bias training, let alone police implicit bias training. I've read quite a bit about it. I've studied up on it. I know quite a bit about it. I'm very familiar with the history of how bias was constructed and created in this country. But that's what implicit bias training is supposed to be about. I have no idea what that training actually looks like on the other side when cops are going through the academy and getting their regular updated training. It doesn't look like it's having much of a difference at this point.
What do you think the city should do next? What do you think the city should be doing right now?
Well, part of this, I'll go back to this implicit bias training and just training on racism in general, what it is, how it works. Right? Cops don't learn to be racist in cop school. They don't get their bias from the police academy. Right? They get their bias growing up in America. They get their bias in their schools. They get their bias from their families. They get their bias from our news media. They get their bias from our entertainment industry. They get their bias every time they turn on a TV. In terms of the way bias works and human nature works and human psychology works, you see one thing associated with another thing. And in your brain, if you see one visual stimuli associated with a certain behavior, a certain thing associated with a certain behavior, more than once, you start assuming that the behavior goes with the thing. That's just a natural inclination. And so when Black people and people of color are talked about or visualized or portrayed, and you see, and doesn't matter if it's a movie, your body, your mind doesn't know, your conscious knows the difference, but your subconscious doesn't. The thing that controls your behavior and your instinct and your fight or flight reflexes doesn't know the difference between what's things that are associated in entertainment and on film and what you encounter in your daily life. And so that's how these biases and these fears of Black people are built, by what all of us are taught to associate with Black people, what all of us are taught to associate with Hispanic people, people of color. And so the retraining, so whether it's a biased cop or a biased teacher or a biased banker who won't give someone a loan, right? They all get it from the same place. And so if you're waiting until they get to the police academy to start your cultural bias training, you've waited 20, 30 years too long. And so I think any kind of effort to deal with this has to be part of a holistic effort to get rid of the bias in our city's culture, our state's culture, our nation's culture. Did that answer? And so as mayor, and I think you were asking this question about what should mayor do, that's the kind of, and so now we're talking about school curriculum as well. Now we're talking about things you put in place in every facet of public government in terms of what an orientation to a position looks like and what regular training in that position looks like. Everywhere you can have some influence on what people encounter and on how people think about their own reactions to what they encounter, and you make that a part of that institution that you have some influence or control over, whether it's the schools or the police.
Yeah. By the way, it's really difficult and challenging to do what you're suggesting, and I'll explain why. Because yes, you could have great training in a school. Absolutely. Which I'm not saying we even have a remotely great training right now, but you could make that, you could make that your goal. Although now that I think about it, like just the notion of integration as a goal in the city of Chicago has been discounted for years. So we don't even pretend, Troy LaRaviere, that we think integration's a good idea. You know what I'm saying? Which would be the first step, in my humble opinion, to breaking down these biases, just forcing people to sort of like be in the same room together. You know, okay. So we don't even pretend anymore. Nobody even, like, we said it was a waste of money to do busing in Chicago. I'm just throwing that out there, Troy. They said it was a waste of money. That's what Paul Vallis and Mayor Daley did back in 1990 something when they dismantled the magnet program, started dismantling it. They said it was a waste of money to have kids on bus. So you wonder why there's so much bias. All right, we're not even doing it in the schools, but let's say we were. Competing with that is an endless stream of images that bombard us all the time in the media. And so I don't know, you're asking a lot of public schools and teachers and principals to try to withstand that like daily bombardment. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, I'm asking a lot of people in general. Like, it's not going to happen in schools. It's not going to happen anywhere unless there's a mass movement to make it happen. And that mass movement has to stay behind it. I would say, too, I will likely not run for public office again. So don't take this as a plug, because it is very unlikely I will ever run for public office again. But when I did run, the main part of my platform was ending residential segregation in Chicago. Like, that's the key. And every other piece of that platform was linked, basically ending racism, like taking a huge bite out of the racist culture of this city. I think that's the number one problem in this nation is the wealth gap, is poor people getting screwed over by rich people. But the most effective tool they use to do that is racism. And we kick racism and we kick that other problem too. Like, they run hand in hand. And so that was the number one part of my platform. So all I have to say is, you the preacher, I'm the choir.
Oh, Lord, you weren't even in Chicago when that happened. I think you were still a young man at University of Illinois Champaign. But I'll tell you what, when Vallis and Chico and Daley, they said, we got to get rid of this busing program because it's a waste. We're spending all this money on gas. Well, the reason we're doing that is to your point, Troy. Like, God forbid, black people and white people live in the same neighborhood. So there's no way you're going to have black people and white people in the same neighborhood school because they don't live in the same neighborhood. And for years and years, like, if a black person moves into a white area, all the white people leave. And then you have the reverse happening as we hit the 21st century of gentrification, moving black people out. So there's only those brief moments in between the racial transformation of a neighborhood one way or the other where they're integrated, and they never go to the same school unless you like having this inducement. All right, but let's you go to I know you'll go to the school of the black person if we have a special arts program. All right, okay. That got them into school together, but you had to bus them in from the side. No, can't do that because it's a waste of money. So the city gives mixed messages, Troy. On the one hand, they say it's a waste of money to have integration. And the other hand, they say this is really awful that people have these implicit biases against each other.
Well, at the same time, they waste money to maintain segregation. You know, the schools are a perfect example. You got North Side schools that are adjacent to you have places in the city where you have majority white schools that are adjacent to an attendance area of a majority black or majority Latino school. Majority white schools overcrowded. Majority Latino or black school is half empty. It would make perfect sense to redraw attendance boundaries and integrate those and create a more integrated school system at one of those schools or even at both of them. But instead, CPS spends millions and millions of dollars building new additions onto the majority white school. so that they can maintain segregation. And it's purposeful and it's intentional. I will never forget our current CEO when that very scenario was happening with South Loop, in South Loop, and there were two schools, and I can't remember which schools they were. One of them was South Loop Elementary School, if I remember correctly. I can't remember what the other one was, but they wanted to, I think, redraw attendance boundaries to connect them. I think the other school was National Teachers Academy.
You're right. Memory's good.
They wanted, instead of building an addition on the South Loop, which had a much wider population and far more affluent population, instead of redrawing attendance boundaries to connect them with those kids at National Teachers Academy, they built an addition on the South Loop. And I remember Janice Jackson at the time that said it was Pollyannish to think that the district could draw those boundaries and like it wasn't their job to address integration. But 1 year later, when they wanted to close National Teachers Academy and give it to the affluent, more wider population in South Loop as a high school, they and then kick those kids out of National Teachers Academies and send them somewhere else. One of the things they said, well, it'll create a more integrated school. So when it was going to inconvenience white people, Jackson was like, it's Pollyannish. When it was going to take away a school from black people, it was the best thing in the world. Yeah. So they like to waste money, and they were going to retrofit the whole school and spend millions of dollars on its new, more affluent population. So when it could have saved money, but create integration, it was Pollyannish. When it was going to waste money and take a school away from black people, it was the best thing in the world. And this is from a black CEO.
Yeah, it's a good memory. And I'd forgotten about that. But that is the story of integration in Chicago. And it comes down to a split-second moment in an alley with a police officer and a 13-year-old kid. You kind of it's easy to overlook years and years and years. You talk about implicit training and bias. Effectively, when Troy, the theme of the story that Troy just told is that you don't want to go to a school with black kids. That's the theme of it, Troy. Yeah. You know, and it really, you're not going to have this conversation openly, but I've heard it many times in my life, having lived among white people my entire life. And I know this governs policy in Chicago, and it governs it's like what they hear when they're growing up.
Well, the theme more specifically is even a little more specific than that. It's not, you don't want to go to school with black kids. It's, we have to keep these black and white people apart.
Yeah.
We cannot let this be a successful example of an integrated school. We cannot let that happen. Racism works by creating ideas in the heads of folks about what black people are. And it's easier to maintain those fake and false ideas if you keep them separate. If you put them together, then people are constantly confronted with the reality of who these black people are that is polar opposite and contradictory to what you've been conditioned to think they are. And that begins to break down those ideas. That's why segregation is one of the greatest tools of racism, because you know, it's propaganda and segregation. The propaganda does not work as well without the segregation, because if you keep encountering these people, if you live next door to these people, then the ideas that have been propagated about them begin to fall apart when you're consistently fronted with the reality of the contradiction. And so you can't have schools with black and white people in the minds of the wealthy who exploit us. You can't have you have to have as few successful examples of that as possible, because you have to keep these people divided so that you can continue to exploit them.
Wow. Let's get your thoughts on what Mayor Lori Lightfoot said. And she said, the city has failed him. And I'm reading from the Sun-Times. I've sat in too many circles watching these young people who are beautiful and magnificent, but traumatized by the violence that they experience every day. We've got to do things differently to change around their fortunes. We owe it to them to do better. This is an important moment for us to take stock, to listen, and then reinvest in strategic ways that are going to really improve the quality of young people's lives.
So I recall a teacher strike about a year or so ago where they had to actually go on strike to get basic investments in kids like him from the mayor. And I recall her resisting quite a bit. I recall the Sun-Times and the press saying, you got a salary raise. What are you doing fighting for these kids? That's not what you're supposed to be doing. You got your salary hike. What is all this extra stuff you want for kids? You know, that's not your role as a union. And so her words run in contradiction to the actual investment she's made or refused to make in our schools, in our neighborhoods, and programs and services for young people. Like, I'm not seeing it. You know, I'm not seeing someone who is marshaling the tax-paying public to promote and justify and raise their awareness of the benefits of investing in these things through our tax dollars. I'm not seeing it. I just heard a speech where she said, we really need to do the things that I have thus far refused to do.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, brother.
I can't. I believe, and I'm trying to remember what the Sun-Times told the teachers, or maybe it was a Tribune, or maybe it was both. It was more like, shut up, take the money, and get back in that classroom. When the teachers went on strike for more nurses and librarians, and they shut up, take the money, get back in the classroom. You got yours. You're lucky you got a job. It's like,
right.
What a city.
And again, to the extent that that speech was meant to divert attention from the wrong done to Adam by that cop, you know, I think it was cowardice at best. Mm-hmm. Right? The point needs to be, you say you put your life on the line, then damn it, wait an extra half a second and be certain before you pull that trigger. That is putting your life on the line. Stop saying you do it when you don't. Stop saying that you're there to serve and protect the public when it's all about protecting yourself. Because that's what that was about. I'm in fear for my life because I think. No, putting your life on the line means you're certain. And it means you have to wait that extra millisecond to be certain. Right? And that's the culture that has to change. You have to be what you say you are. You have to do what you say you do. You say you put your life on the line, then damn it, wait that extra half a second. And in that half a second, you are putting your life on the line. And you're doing it to help save another life, possibly. That didn't happen with Adam.
Another thing that has changed in terms of...
and again, Lightfoot didn't make that point. It's her job as mayor to make that point. And she's avoiding that point.
To make the point you just made? I've never heard anybody make the point you just made. And I thought I heard everything. And you just admitted that you had never made that point until this moment when you said it. And it's a very powerful point. And when you were saying that, I kind of was thinking about the negotiations that just went on between teachers and CPS over going back to the classroom in the middle of a pandemic. Mm-hmm. And teachers are worried about their lives and the lives of their family and the lives of the kids and their family. And everybody's like, always in Chicago, shut up, go back in there. Don't worry about your life.
Yeah, but, I've never made it in public, but I've been thinking it for years. But, you know, I'm an educator, so people don't often ask me what I think about police brutality and police reform. So it's just been in my mind. Thinking, why isn't anybody saying this? I wish I had an opportunity. And here you go, Ben.
Yeah. One thing that has changed, Troy, this is what I was going to get at. Get your thoughts on this. Is now it's like politicians are being really cautioned not to in any way, quote unquote, blame the family. And this runs counter. I was actually going to write about this. Get your thoughts on this. This runs counter to the impulse that so many people have in their private conversations. Like in this conversation, I can assure you, Troy LaRaviere, that countless Chicagoans of all races were saying, what was that kid doing in that alley at 2:30? How come that mother didn't know about the kid in the alley at 2:30? And I'm watching all these politicians are like, I'm not going there. I'm not going to criticize the family. Do you follow what I'm saying? It's like, it's a training program about how to handle the crisis after the crisis has happened, while pretending like these ideas are not circulating in society. Your reaction?
Didn't know about the training program or that advice, because I know Rom was a little different.
Yes, he was. Yes.
There's some real stupid shit, man. About the value systems of families and neighborhoods. Dude, I want to say something inappropriate right now, but anyway. I
think they learned from Rom. That's a good point. I think they're kind of like, that's what, on a PR I didn't mean literally there was a training program, like they brought in a. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
So, I mean, the whole idea is stupid, man. I got 5 siblings. Actually, I got 10 of us, but 5 on my mother's side. And one of us growing up, myself as a teenager, worked odd jobs, worked on my brother's moving van, would go across country. I got a part-time job at Reggio's Pizza, found my way to the Navy. Another one of us was a gangster disciple, sold dope, carried weapons, got fortunate and found his way onto a wrestling team at high school in Dunbar, got a scholarship, went off to Howard University and became one of the 2 siblings who was a Chicago public school principal. Another one, dropped out of high school, got into alcohol, got into drugs, has been in and out of rehab, love him to death. Is the one that looks most like me. We the ones who look most like each other, I should say. And another one became a trucker. Like same mother, right? Different opportunities and circumstances. The world makes us what we are. Your parents have some influence, and particularly in the circumstances in a community like that, where it's quite likely the mother had a job, the father had a job, the mother had a second job, the father had a second job, and they working just to make sure there's something to eat on the table when Shorty gets home. It's interesting for, middle class people with that kind of time who don't have to work 18 hours of the day to say, where was the parent? Without thinking about what the parent has to do just to survive and make sure that the family survives. So those are some initial thoughts that I have. I think that whole line of thinking is, I wouldn't say completely off, but mostly off.
I would say it's 99% off. And as you were going on your riff, I'm thinking about how sheltered a life. I'm going to share this. My mother, may she rest in peace, Troy, I was a mama's boy. And she rode me. I was not to leave the house. Okay. Right. And that's how she ran it. And she was a Chicago public school teacher. And she had command of that house. Okay. But I went with it for whatever reason. You can analyze me all day, but I went with it. I could easily have rebelled against it, Troy. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, in other words, like, right. I could have easily have said, no way, I got to get out. I could easily gone into my room, waited till everyone was asleep, open the window, climb down, boom, go run with my friend. I could have done that. Mm-hmm. I chose not to. So this notion that, like, there's a way you got to raise kids and parents aren't raising their kids the right way just misses like all the other factors out there that affect and impact the kid. including like what's going on in his head. You follow me?
Right. And then that's where Lori's comment comes in, whether she knows it or not, because those factors, that would have been more like 95%, by the way, but 95, 99. But those factors, that thing that she talks about, well, we failed them, right? So those are the things that raise kids. Like when they go out into those streets, when they go out into different institutions that are out there, when they get out there in an environment outside of the home, like there's an ecosystem out there. And there's an ecosystem that politics and government and its institutions can have an impact on, so that when kids find themselves in that ecosystem, that there are better options there for them than what are there right now. And so that's how we failed them. Like kids are, the whole it takes a village. That's the village out there. And we've defunded the village.
Yeah. Yeah. We've defunded the village. So let's hope. I'm up searching for hope all day. And as soon as I say this, I have no hope this will happen. Let's hope all those powers that be that join Lori Lightfoot and try to shame teachers back in, November 2019 for going on strike to hire more nurses. How dare they? Let's hope that all those powers that be, everybody's supposed to be doing reflecting. It's a moment of reflection, Troy. At this, we've all been forced more or less to watch this gruesome murder. And as a point, and now the exercise is, well, what can we learn from it? Well, I would love to see for once, and I've only seen it really once in my lifetime, this is before you were born. Dr. King was killed. The West Side went up in flames. And the old Mayor Daley, convened the powers that be in the city. We better do something. Mm-hmm. We got it. They're going to burn our city down. We better do something. That happened in 1968. So I'm still like, I would love to see the powers that be, Troy LaRaviere, look at this moment and go, maybe we were wrong to say it was a good idea to spend $1.3 billion on an upscale development on the north side. Maybe we were wrong to say teachers should shut up and go into the classroom and not worry about nurses. I have a feeling, Troy LaRaviere, that won't happen. Try to convince me of otherwise and let me leave this show today with a little hope. Go ahead.
Well, brother, hope. Yeah. For me, hope is the ability to act today on behalf of the tomorrow that you envision. So hope involves, it's like something you can see. You can see hope. When you see folk out there organizing, and you see them trying to uplift folks' consciousness toward elevate that vision and give people a sense of how they can build it and give them things to do to build it. You call this politician, you raise these funds, we put these materials together, let's have a teach-in, let's hold this event, let's have this march, let's elevate. Like when you see people working on behalf of the thing they want to see tomorrow that does not exist today, that's hope. That's the only place hope can exist and work. And so to the extent that we're willing to work for it, that's the extent to which there's hope. And I'll leave it at that, brother. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, it did make sense. All right, we're running out of time here. I should let you go, but I just have to ask you, since we're talking about schools, this is on my mind a lot, and it is related, the elected school board. What a city. So long last, it looks as though they're going to vote for an elected school board. And at the last moment, I don't know if you're paying attention, Troy, Mayor Lori Lightfoot had an alternative introduced in Springfield, which would be so it's like trying to, you got to laugh at some point, Troy. It's like, well, part of the board would be elected. Only 2 out of 9 members, I think it was 7 appointed, 2 9. Don't quote me in the numbers because I don't have them in front of me. But in other words, the controlling interest would be hers. Okay, I mean, there is kind of a relation. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it is all related. What you've been talking about, the need, to address these fundamental inequities in the city of Chicago that we have that lead to something like what went down 3 weeks ago in that alley.
Mm-hmm.
And whether we're going to allow a democracy to flourish in the city of Chicago or continually to put the things, just keep them in the hands of the mayor.
Right. So my position on elected school board is that it has to be representative. All right. It has to be representative. And you can't, because it's an elected representative school board, and people don't talk about like the actual things that have to be put in place to make it representative. For example, if it's an at-large election, it's likely not going to be representative, because you have to get citywide votes and you need citywide money. So you're certainly going to have to divide places up into smaller sub-districts. I think another way to make it representatives is to give qualifications, like you have to be a parent of the Chicago public school student in a neighborhood school, right? That would make it more. That would make it more likely. That would increase the likelihood that it would be representative. If we brought in ranked choice voting, that would make it more likely that it would be actually representative of the people who are served by the district. And so, to the extent that a proposal has sub-elements that increase the likelihood that the board will indeed be representative, to the extent that it has it, I support it. To the extent that it doesn't, we're just creating another city council at the school board level. We have to remember, we have an elected representative city council, and it's garbage. And it doesn't, at least the majority of it, is garbage. And it doesn't necessarily represent the will of the people, but the will of the real estate folk, the developers, the bankers. Because of the way elections work in this city. But the things we can do about our elections, things we can do about the qualifications for people who could run to make sure, or to make it more likely, you're never going to guarantee it, but to make it more likely that the people who hold office will actually represent the people in the district that they're supposed to represent. So that's it. And I'll say that, and I'll say that the proposal that's on the table right now doesn't do that, and Lori Lightfoot's proposal goes even further away from doing that.
By the way, I just want to say this is one of the benefits of being really old like I am. I remember when we had something along the lines of what you're suggesting. You were a young scholar at Dunbar High School, but that's how long ago it was. I just had to get that young scholar line in there. We had a nominee
in there too.
Yeah, I had it all. I put it all together. We did. We had it. We got rid of it. It was like not LSCs had nominating. They were like each district or each region of the city had a governing board of LSCs, and they in turn had a citywide board of LSCs, and they gave recommendations to the mayor for the school board. So it was along the lines of what you were saying. And they got rid of it in 1995 because they thought all power had to be in the hands of the mayor, particularly if it was a mayor named Daley. All right, Troy, I will close it down, but I have to tell you this. I'll end on a little light note. And this is honest truth. I was going to text you last night, but it was like 1 a.m. and I'm like, that'd be really weird. He's probably sleeping, and most normal people are sleeping.
Normally I'm not. Last night I was.
Okay. You will like this. My wife had figured out how to set up YouTube on the TV. It was a big moment in our house. And I said, you gotta watch Prince playing While My Guitar Gently Weeps at the Hall of Fame. And we were talking about the last time we were on the show. So I put it on, and he blew my mind away. I've seen it like 50 times. The dude, like, they're playing all these rockers, Tom Petty. They're the George Harrison's kid is really, and then Prince just kind of walks on stage. He's got that hat. I forgot the hat.
The red fedora, I think.
Yeah. He's like, you fellas done? Because let the man take over. And he just starts playing, and he closes it down, Troy. He takes a guitar, he just throws it in the air and walks off. I'm like, wow.
That's right, man. What'd your wife think?
She blown away.
Good.
And then, and I'm not hating on Eric Clapton, but a little hate will come out. So the way YouTube works, the next clip, you know, it's like a whole stream of clips.
Right.
So it's like they're on a riff on While My Guitar Gently Weeps. So the next one that comes on is Eric Clapton playing it. Mm-hmm. Sorry to say, man, I mean, are you kidding me? What else? You can't, the difference is night and day between the sound coming out of Prince's guitar and the sound coming out of Eric Clapton.
Yeah, man, it's crazy that when they make these greatest guitars of all time, that Prince is not amongst the top 3. He's not even in the top 10. I don't know why they undervalue him or underestimate or underrate him. To me, he's one of the top 3 guitarists, if not the best guitarists of all time. He's got the catalog to show it. He's got the live performances to show it. But he does so much other stuff that I think it kind of takes away of people taking that part of his repertoire seriously. But when you watch it, it's incredible.
I urge everybody to check it out. While My Guitar Gently Weeps. I think it's at the Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And Prince is a performance for a lifetime. And by the way, I spent about another half hour watching Carlos Santana play. You talk about great guitars. And it was like 2 a.m. I go, I got to go to bed. This is ridiculous. I got a show to do. I didn't know I would be talking to you today. I said, should I text Troy? Leave him alone. The guy's probably sleeping. He think I'm really weird. You know, by the way, Troy, guess what I just watched? Prince. Anyway, man, that's something I do to keep sane. You know what I'm saying, Troy? I got to keep saying.
I do something similar. I find myself on YouTube loops. And if you go, for your audience, if you watch that video, Why My Guitar Gently Weeps, don't expect Prince right away. He doesn't come on until like 3 minutes into it. So it's worth it just to build up. Listen to the whole thing and watch it build and build, and he just gently strolls into the sky like he wasn't even there, and then just takes up all time and space.
Yes. He just kind of he does. He like strolls on. Yeah, here I am. You guys done? Watch this.
The crazy thing, he's on stage the whole time and you don't even notice him. He's just over in the corner, you know, just riffing away a little bit, playing the harmonies with the rest of the band, but you don't even know it's him.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. All right, we could talk about Prince all day. Troy LaRaviere, I didn't expect you to be talking with you today, but you made me feel better. I didn't expect it
either, and I'm glad that it happened, brother. So glad. And tell D-Nice I said what's up.
Here he is. Here's that good-looking
Troy.
man.
Yeah, man, I reached out to you. Thank you for coming on. That was awesome.
Hey, thanks for reaching out.
All right, that's Troy LaRaviere. I'm going to take all of his ideas, steal them, and claim them as my own. Everybody's going to go, God damn, you're smart. Poor Troy. Not going to get any credit. You'll see it in next week's column.
All right, cool.
And I'll give you credit. All right, that's the great Troy LaRaviere, good friend of the show, the president of the Chicago Principals Association.